Good afternoon. I'm your English teacher Dash Vasivara. Subject is language aspects. Today's our new theme is lesson 2. What is discourse analysis? So, what is discourse analysis? Discourse analysis is a research method for studying written or spoken language in relation to social context. It aims to understand how language is used in real-life situations. When you do discourse analysis, you might focus on the purposes and effects of different types of language, cultural rules and conventions in communication, how values, beliefs, and assumptions are communicated, how language relates to its social, political, and historical context. Discourse analysis is a common qualitative research method in many humanities and social science disciplines, including linguistics, sociology, anthropology, psychology, and cultural studies. So in this lesson, we will watch a video lesson about discourse analysis. Let's watch this video lesson about discourse analysis.
What is discourse analysis? Discourse analysis study the way sentences and utterances in speech go together to make texts and interactions and how those texts and interactions fit into our social world. It should be noticed also that discourse analysis is not just the study of language, but a way of looking at language as well. This way of looking at language is based on four main assumptions. 1. Language is ambiguous. What things mean is never absolutely clear. 2. Language is always in the world. That is, what language means is always a matter of where and when it is used. 3. The way we use language is inseparable from who we are in the different social groups to which we belong. 4. Language is never used all by itself. It is always combined with other things such as our tone of voice, facial expressions and gestures when we speak, and the fonts, layout, and graphics we use in written texts. What is good in discourse analysis? Understanding how discourse works, we will be able to understand people better and communicate more effectively. Texts and texture. Discourse analysts analyze texts and conversations. Text. Text is everything that is meaningful in a particular situation, and the basis for meaning is choice. Texture. Texture is the quality that makes a particular set of words or sentences a text, rather than a random collection of linguistic items. So it is the relationship between one set of choice and another. What are two important things that make a text a text? What are two important things that make a text a text? 1. Features inherent in the language itself, things, for example, like grammatical rules. 2. These features that help you to figure out the relationship between the various sets of choices, text and their social function. What is meant by a genre? A genre is a recognizable communicative event characterized by a set of communicative purposes identified and mutually understood by members of the community in which it occurs. What is meant by genre analysis? It is the study of the social functions of different kinds of texts. Genre characterizations. 1. Genres are communicative events. Most texts are not just trying to get only one thing done. The communicative purposes of texts are often multiple and complex. 2. Conventions and constraints. These constraints govern not just what can be included, but also how it should be included. 3. Creativity. That is not to say that all job application letters, or other genres like newspaper articles and recipes, are always exactly the same, as the directors of the often the most successful texts are those which break the rules, defy conventions, and push the boundaries of constraints. For discourse communities, genres are always associated with certain groups of people that have certain common goals and common ways of reaching these goals. Discourse and ideology. Discourse and ideology. Ideology. It is a specific set of beliefs and assumptions that people have about things like what is good and bad, what is right and wrong, and what is normal and abnormal. Context promote ideology. We will focus on 4 things. 1. The ways authors create versions of reality based on their choice of words and how they combine words together. 2. The ways authors construct certain kinds of relationships between themselves and their readers. 3. The ways authors appropriate the words of other people and how they represent those words. 4. The ways authors of texts draw upon and reinforce the larger systems of belief and knowledge that govern what counts as right or wrong, good or bad, and normal or abnormal in a particular society. Who doing what? The linguist Michael Halliday 1994 pointed out that whenever we use language we are always doing 3 things at once. 1. We are in some way representing the world, called ideational function of language. 2. We are creating, ratifying, or negotiating our relationships with the people with whom we are communicating, called the interpersonal function of language. 3. We are joining sentences and ideas together in particular ways to form cohesive and coherent texts, called the textual function of language. All of these functions play a role in the way a text promotes a particular ideology or worldview. Interpersonal function. Ideational function. Interpersonal function. Textual function. Relationships intertextuality. We construct relationships through words we choose to express things like certainty and obligation, known as the system of modality in a language. A traditional priest, for example, typically says you may now kiss the bride, rather than kiss the bride. Intertextuality. It is the relationship texts create with other texts. Intertextuality is another important way ideologies are promoted in discourse. All texts involve some degree of intertextuality. We cannot speak or write, he argues, without borrowing the words and ideas of other people. Cultural models discourses. Cultural models are sets of expectation that we have about how different kinds of people should behave and communicate in different situations. They serve an important role in helping us make sense of the texts and the situations that we encounter in our lives. You may now kiss the bride, then. Does this not just enforce a theory about how brides and grooms are supposed to act during a marriage ceremony, but also invokes broader theories about marriage, gender relations, love, sex, morality, and economics? All of these theories are part of a system of discourse which we might call the discourse of marriage. Discourses. Discourses can exert a tremendous power over us by creating constraints regarding how certain things can be talked about and what counts as knowledge in particular contexts. Spoken discourse. In many ways, speech is not so different from writing. When people speak, they also produce different kinds of genres. 2. Use different kinds of social languages. 3. Also promote particular versions of reality or ideologies. But there are some ways in which speech is very different from writing. 1. Speech is more interactive. 2. Speech tends to be more transient and spontaneous than writing. 3. While some genres like formal speeches and lectures are planned, most casual conversation is just made up as we go along. 4. Speech tends to be less explicit than writing. 5. Speech also usually takes place in some kind of physical context. Kinds of speech, spoken discourse, that have distinguished features. 1. Telephone conversations. 2. Television and cinema. 3. Instant messaging and text-based computer chats. Pragmatics. The study of how people use words to accomplish actions in their conversations, actions like requesting, threatening, and apologizing. Conversation analysis. This one comes out of a tradition in sociology called ethnomethodology, which focuses on the methods ordinary members of a society use to interact with one another and interpret their experience. Strategic interaction. Conversation. Conversations happen when multiple actions are put together to form activities. We chat, we debate, we flirt, we counsel, we gossip, we commiserate, and we do many other things in our conversations. Conversational strategies. The methods we use to engage in the former negotiations, debating, flirting, commiserating, etc. Two basic kinds of conversational strategies. Face strategies have to do primarily with showing who we are and what kind of relationship we have with the people with whom we are talking. Framing strategies have more to do with showing what we are doing in the conversation, whether we are, for example, arguing, teasing, flirting, or gossiping. Face strategies. We define face as the negotiated public image mutually granted to each other by participants in a communicative event. There are three important aspects to this definition. One is that one's face is one's public image rather than one's true self. Two is result of a kind of give and take with the person or people with whom we are interaction. Three is successfully presenting a certain face in interaction depends on the people with whom we are interaction cooperation with us. There are two kinds of face strategies. One, involvement strategies. Strategies we use to establish or maintain closeness with the people to show them that we consider them our friends, like calling people by their first names or using nicknames. Two, independent strategies. Strategies we use to establish or maintain distance from the people with whom we are interacting either because we are not their friends or we wish to show them respect, like using more formal language and terms of address. Independence. Involvement. Using titles, Mr., Professor, good morning. Using formal language, excuse me, can you help me? Being indirect, I wonder if I can borrow your pen. Talking about things other than us. Being tacit or not talking a lot. Using first names or nicknames, hi, no. Using informal language, gotta, minute. Being direct, let's go to cinema. Talking about us. Being voluble, talking a lot. Framing strategies, sets of expectations about what kinds of things will be said and how those things ought to be interpreted for different kinds of activities. Primary framework. It is a set of expectations about the overall activity in which we will be engaged. Example, when we are a patient in a medical examination, we expect that the doctor will touch us, and we interpret this behavior as a method for diagnosing our particular medical problem. However, hardly ever involves just one activity. We often engage in a variety of different activities within the primary framework. Example, while lecturing, a lecturer might give explanations, tell jokes, or even rebuke members of the audience if they are not paying attention. Context, culture, and communication. It could mean practically anything from the place and time of day of an utterance to speakers' political views or religious beliefs. Context can be divided into three components. The relevant features of participants, persons, personalities. The relevant objects in the situation. The effect of the verbal action. Sitting and time. The field or the social where the action take place. The relationship between context and competence. Knowledge or mastery of the linguistic system alone is not sufficient for successful communication. People also need to know and master various rules, norms, and conventions regarding what to say to whom, when, where, and how, which is called communicative competence. There may be persons whose English I can grammatically identify but whose messages escape me.
So, viewers, it is the end of our video lesson. If you have got any misunderstandings or questions, you can contact me. So, I think it's clear today's new thing for you. Our lesson is over. Goodbye.